Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. This edition of Socrates Garrett Live is being brought to you by Earth Blend Coffee. Earth Blend Coffee, the best coffee that money can buy, being roasted right here in Jackson, Mississippi. The company is owned by African Americans. Wherever you are in the world, if you think now is a time for you to reach out and try and engage with African American businesses, do it with Earth Blend Coffee. It can be shipped anywhere in the world. Go to earthblendcoffee.co. Order the coffee today. Now, we normally come on Tuesdays at 7:30, but tonight we're on with an early edition of Socrates Garrett Live. And we're on early because I have a very, very special guest in the studio with us tonight. And later on, we'll be joined by Bishop Ronnie Crudup as well. But my guest tonight is the Honorable Mayor of Canton, Mississippi, Mayor Truly. Welcome, Mayor Truly.
And welcome to you also. And, of course, welcome to the world. It's just a pleasure to be here. I'm just content and elated to know that you're the creator and the producer of this scream and also this coffee, which I'll be using from now on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. You know, let me just give full disclosure. I feel like Dr. Truly. I call him Mayor Truly. I call him Dr. Truly. He's both of those. But he also is like a brother to me because he worked so long and so hard in the civil rights movement and advocating for African Americans. And he studied right along with my father, the late W.E. Garrett. And W.E. Garrett was a warrior in the community, was the first African American to run for the office of supervisor in Madison County. At a time when it was tremendously dangerous to do so, when crosses were burned and people were still rights were being violated, etc. But he had a calling on him, and he took a real liking to Dr. Truly. And Dr. Truly, you in fact picked up the baton, and you have done wonderful things with that. Tell us a little bit about how you became mayor and a little bit about your civil rights background.
Well, of course, I've always been involved in civil rights, and I always tell people on the day that I was born numerous years ago, one of the first questions I asked when I popped out of my mother's womb, where do I register and vote? And that was so many years ago. And of course, you know, gosh, today is entirely different from the days of yesteryear. And the days of yesteryear, you know, we talk about the death of Emmett Till. Mm-hmm. We talk about the march into the Central Nine in Little Rock, Arkansas. We talk about the death of Kennedy and John and Malcolm. Mm-hmm. Just so much tragedy. And I guess, you know, Socrates, you can actually say that you and I are actually living history. Mm-hmm. Because we have passed through the 50s and 60s and 70s, and there's not a major event in the world of civil rights that has occurred that we have not experienced or that we have not witnessed.
And some of that was very painful.
And just most painful.
Right.
To even talk about it, but you have to talk about it. And of course, people talk about, oh, well, I don't want to see the movie Roots. But you have to know your history. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know your history, you never know where you're going. Mm-hmm. And you have to know who you are. You have to know your past. I think one of the problems today is that there are too many of us who simply don't recognize and realize our past. Mm-hmm. They don't know about Mr. Garrett, and they don't know about Judge Garrett, mm-hmm. And they don't know about other giants like Edward Blackburn, who's mm-hmm. paved the way mm-hmm. In so many ways. There in Canton, Mississippi.
Right, C.O. Chin.
C.O. Chin.
Clarence Chin.
And,
yes,
and all of those.
Club Desire. I spent a lot of nights down the weekends down at Club Desire in Canton, Mississippi. I saw Bobby Blue Bland there for the first time. Yeah,
gosh, and it's just amazing that there are those of us like yourself, like your father, your mother, and others who simply paved the way. So that we can have moments like this.
Right.
Yeah.
So much history in Canton.
It's so much history. You know, when I came there, Tolliver's was still standing.
Right.
You know more about the Holler than I do.
Sure.
The business district, the entertainment
I was told
district.
on many occasions back in the day in Canton, because we were out from Farm Haven, which is a few miles outside of Canton. We're in the suburbs of Canton.
Right.
And in the country. And I was told on many occasions by the Canton police that I better be out of Canton before the sun goes down.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And even those who enjoyed the entertainment and the camaraderie there in the Holler actually couldn't go downtown on the square in Canton.
Right.
And it's just amazing how it has gone through such a transition where African Americans are basically disseminated all over the place now, mm-hmm. and how things have changed. You know, I was actually minding my business. Having finished medical school at Mahara Medical College, undergraduate school at Howard University, and actually contemplating doing a residency in surgery in New York. And a gentleman came along, talked to me, and convinced me to come to Mississippi, who was Dr. Charles Humphrey, who smoked cigarettes every day, who's deceased now, but a great man. And he convinced me to come here as a consequence of sharing with me that Charles Humphrey and Aaron Shirley and
giants, just absolute giants,
and what the concept that emanated from their minds were the comprehensive health centers that actually had its birth and origin here in the state of Mississippi, and they shared with me that, of course, we need you to come down and help poor folks. I said, well, I'm poor. So, I had the outdoor toilet and outdoor running water, and we had the pins on the clothesline.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you had to get them in before Sunday, though. You couldn't get.
So I said, well, look, hey, I'm right at home. So I came here in 71.
71.
Yeah, this is 2021 now.
Yes.
So anyone who can calculate and add,
right.
Give you some kind of an idea as to how long I've been here.
Yes.
But it has been difficult. I was with the federal program, G.A. Carmichael. We were told...
Carmichael was the only doctor we had in Canton, Mississippi back in the day, Dr.
Back
Truly.
in the day. And, there was another...
African-American doctor.
African-American, and that was Dr. Bowman, who never did get hospital privileges.
Right.
Sister Thea Bowman's dad.
Right.
And that was Dr. Jones, who was a dentist.
Right.
But it was difficult. I was a drum major for civil rights and medicine during that time because we were told that we don't need federal intrusion, that we can take care of our own Negroes. I really got myself into a lot of trouble, as I usually do.
Right.
I've forgotten her name. It was Dr. Gambrell's sister. She was a Gambrell on WLBT.
Okay.
And one of the big complaints during that time was the white physicians don't touch us. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was naive at that time. Didn't recognize and realize that there's certain things that you didn't say. But it was difficult, and I applied for hospital privileges on numerous occasions and was denied back in the 70s. Matter of fact, I didn't actually receive hospital privileges in Canton, Mississippi until 1987.
Wow.
And that was only as a consequence of the African-American physicians who were members of the G.A. Carmichael Healthcare Facility who had gotten on staff.
Right.
Well, they were good Negroes and not a threat.
Mm-hmm.
I was out having people, raising the level of consciousness of people,
Right.
Having them to register and vote,
Right.
and having them to be their own voice.
Right.
I was really never a quiet guy.
Right.
And that has always gotten me into trouble.
Right.
Because
right.
I've always considered myself to be an American.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that I'm supposed to be at the front of the bus like everybody else.
First-class citizen. Yeah. James Meredith talks about first-class citizenship all the
I thought
time.
that I'm supposed, all these other guys are buying a hamburger, they're on the beach, they're on the tennis courts, and I'm supposed to do those things too.
Right.
And so I recall that we were on the beach in Florida, and some of the, of course, white folks said, well, what are you boys doing out here on this beach? We said, well, this was like in the 60s. We said, well, this is God Beach. And they said, God, hell, this is our beach, and y'all better get out of here.
Boy, you've seen a lot, Doc.
I've seen a lot.
You've seen a lot.
Yeah, you have to have the strength now. And it has taught me with faith and grace to have a lot of strength to survive.
Right.
And most people cannot survive because they don't have enough thick skin or toughened skin.
Right.
And their skin has never been toughened in order to get through the atrocities of prejudice and racism that they are experiencing today.
Right.
We've been saying a long time and talking about a long time about police brutality in our community. We experienced, we saw it. We had no one to go to. Couldn't go to the judge, couldn't go to the district DA, couldn't go to the police chief. They were all members of the Klan.
That's right.
And so that's what we see today. And people say, what happened to the Klan? Well, many of the Klan's members joined the police force. And
they were always part of the law enforcement.
Yeah. And so they... But anyway, look, I know I'm going to get a lot.
No. We got time. We got time to spend, and our audience need to understand the struggle and the difficulties that you had as a professional, getting credentialed and being able to practice your craft in a segregated city like Canton back in those days, where blacks couldn't go to the hospital. And so most of medicine were, Carmichael was there and the doctor
Yes.
that you mentioned before, but then midwives delivered most of all of the babies throughout that country at that
Exactly.
time. And so, and they had herbs way back. We think we do it with herbs now. Back in the day, they could fix you some root tea and some things of that nature that would make you drink that
yeah.
warm castor oil.
Don't give me cod liver oil and haddock oil.
And boy, you know, and you would get well. I don't know if you got well because you didn't want to take anymore, or you got well because it helped. But it was tough times back then.
It
Doc.
was, and I vividly recall my grandmama used to boil this bark from a cherry tree and said, "Drink this."
Right.
It cured something. I don't know what it cured.
Well, Doc, you
gosh.
went on and you served your time, and then you decided to become mayor. Why did you run for mayor, Doc?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question, and people don't realize, and they're probably forgotten, that Dr. Walter Johnson, who is my pastor, W.L. Johnson, he and I ran in 1979.
Okay.
I ran for mayor against Sidney Runnels, and so
Sidney was the last white mayor.
he was the last white mayor.
Right.
And so I ran in 69. I had no idea what I was doing. I said, look, no one is opposing this guy. This makes no sense to me.
Right.
And so Sidney ran. I've forgotten the incumbent mayor. I also ran. But I received more votes than the incumbent mayor. But I had no idea of the intricacies and the intimacy of politics at that time. The corruption, the vote stealing, people voting from Tennessee and Memphis coming back, you know, just to vote. So, you know, I ran. And so my whole thing about politics, look, is to me, it has simply been natural. Even when I was in high school, I was the president of the senior class, president of the student council. When I was in junior college, I was the president of something at Howard University. I was Stokely Carmichael was our mentor. Walter Fontroy was our chaplain, and Gloria Richardson was also associated with. We were all members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and I was a contributing writer to Howard's University Hilltop paper. I was always giving speeches about home rule for D.C., which hopefully the Senate will do this year.
Which for our audience out there, and let me just interrupt to say that this show is being brought to you on Facebook. Go to We Believe Digital Podcast on Facebook and join us live. Or you can go to WeBelieveDigital.com, our own platform, and join us live there. It's tremendously important. That's We Believe Digital Podcast on Facebook and WeBelieveDigital.com on the web. So join us there and catch this show live. Doc, you were talking about the things that were going on there in Canton. There were some prominent families back there that helped pave the way.
Correct.
And a lot of our talent came out of Canton. A lot of star athletes. Premier
Greenwood,
attorneys. I know that
Roland Garrett.
Roland Garrett came out, played for the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
Ed Blackman became the premier attorney in the state of Mississippi. Probably.
Exactly.
I heard Dennis Sweet said that in the courtroom he was the best he'd ever seen.
He is. I've seen him too, and I've seen a lot of attorneys who are close to me, but he just handled a case for me and my wife, and I was disqualified to run for mayor by an idiot. But at any rate, I had never seen anything like it. It was actually like magic, and I just appreciated his talent and his skills. And this was a passion for him of correcting the wrong, because, you know, Ed was brutally injured along with, what's the other attorney's name?
First
Walker.
Smith.
Walker.
Yeah, okay.
At one of these clubs, and so he has been through the brutality of racism during his younger days, and so he's a very brilliant guy, brilliant young man.
And his wife Barbara is not any shortstop right
she's
there.
not in the shortstop.
No,
she's a
not
tax
at all.
lawyer, corporate lawyer.
Yeah,
And she certainly
brilliant.
lets me know that I'm not a real lawyer.
And don't forget First Smith. First Smith was there.
Was there a long time.
A long time
George
ago.
Nichols
So
and
a lot
the
of talent,
guys.
a lot of people
Just a lot of
came out of Canton, Mississippi.
Barty's sister ended up in opera.
Right, right.
Just a lot of talent. But people always say to me, well, how do you combine the two?
Mm-hmm.
Because they seem to be two different, separate, and isolated careers.
Okay.
And
this is the mayor's role, and that as a physician.
As a physician.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
but I still
okay.
practice medicine today.
Okay.
I actually retired in 2004, whatever that means.
Okay.
But so in my world, you manage patients, you get their sugar under control, and you make it better. You make their blood pressure better. If they have an irregular heartbeat, you straighten it out so it can have a regular beat and so forth. So you treat their illness. But the point of the matter is that you do all of these things to make the patient better, but you send the patient home, and the patient can see the sky through his roof and can see the ground through his floor, and barely has food to eat, and can hardly take care of his children, poorly educated, sometimes uneducated. And so now you ask the question, what am I really doing? Because I'm actually making a phase of this social creature and this social being better, but I'm not addressing all of the needs of this individual. So I thought that politics might be the answer, and maybe what I could do is help folks with their housing issues, with their financial issues, with their economic development issues, and just enhance the quality of life. And it worked out for me because I've always treated medicine as being a servant. I'm one of the guys who used to get the chickens and the pies and the collard greens and all of this stuff, and let me pay you Saturday. Not Saturday, but Saturday.
Saturday. Yeah, I can pronounce it correctly. Yeah.
And so medicine to me, I've always looked upon myself as a servant. And in the political world of trying to find better housing and a better quality of life as it relates to housing and education, and saying to our young black boys, don't say bang bang, you are dead. And I was born in a sea of poverty. We had the outdoor chickens, the outdoor running water, but poverty was never born in me, and that's the difference. And so the point of the matter is that if you look at yourself as serving folks, so in politics I look upon myself, which is what I am, a servant, and in medicine I am a servant. So it makes it easy for me to be a servant and integrate and intertwine those two distinct careers.
Wonderful.
I treat them as one. I mean, I shift from one to the other.
Right. Wonderful. Mayor, I'm shifting gears on you a little bit.
Sure.
I'm hearing some things that I can't quite understand what's going on in my hometown. It's my understanding that, we might not have ballots for the upcoming election, which is April 6th, I believe. And I just can you share with us a little bit what's going on in Canton in the way of the local elections?
Well, actually what's going on, or what was going on, is madness and mess. And it's a consequence of going back to 2017. We actually had a list of Democrats who ran for the Democratic Executive Committee. The 3 Republicans ran for the Democratic Executive Committee: Kathy Irvin, Nancy Wesley James, and John Scanlon. 2 of the Republicans rolled off. John Scanlon stayed on, and the other gentlemen, 2 Democrats, Marion Freeman and Nawasi Truly. And of course, from 2017 up to 2021 now, there's basically been no activity. So another Democratic Executive Committee was formed, known as a temporary Democratic Executive Committee that was formed on 2315-313, but only because there was an impression that the first one was not functioning. So we ended up basically with two executive committees, and in which there was never any harmony between the two. And so what happened in the brilliance of the Board of Aldermen, the Board of Aldermen gave reasons and cause as to why they should recognize John Scanlon, who was a Republican, and his group as the true Democratic, a legitimate Democratic Party, which is what they did. Well, they recognized him as the true legitimate Democratic Executive Committee. The first thing he did was he disqualified me. He disqualified Eric Gilkey's wife, Monica. He disqualified Rodriguez Brown of Ward 1. And, of course, he disqualified my wife. And there was another individual who he disqualified that I can't think of right now. So now you have chaos. Because you got all of these candidates who have been disqualified by an executive committee who was given the authority by our board.
Wow.
Yeah. So you go figure that. And so I've known John.
How can this be?
How
could the board give the authority to do that? And
you know what? It's fascinating as to how that happened and why it happened. And I asked a lot of my comrades who are on the board, did you know that you were given authority to John Scanlon? Because I knew John Scanlon. John Scanlon disqualified me in 2017. And I know all about his racist tendencies and who he is. And so it was nothing new to me. But the fact of the matter is that was the beginning of the point of the city of Canton committing nearly suicide and not having an election. So now we're in court before Judge Pickard.
So let me ask you, it was a possibility that the city of Canton wouldn't have any African-American candidates on the ballot for April 6th election.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. And so how does
That's never been heard of in the history of the world, I don't think.
In the history of the world, and even the ancient world, and the medieval world. And because because that's the direction in which we were headed. So how does that work? In order for the African-American Democrats to have moved on and to have qualified to run, you had to have been nominated by the Democratic Executive Committee.
Right.
And, well, of course, if there's no Democratic Executive Committee, you can't qualify.
You don't get qualified.
You don't get qualified.
So the party doesn't have a nominee.
So does
that mean then that the Republican candidate would automatically win the mayor's office?
Yeah, right.
And the whole government of Canton could go Republican in one swoop?
The whole government of Canton could go Republican in one swoop. And as I talked about this with one of the attorney generals, I'm not going to call his name, he said, and this is a white attorney general in the attorney general's office, you guys are trying to give the city to the Republicans. And that's the direction in which we were headed. It would have been Chip Matthews who would have ended up being the mayor. I really don't quite understand how the alderman would have been appointed. That's really not clear to me. But there was so much confusion. There was one alderman at least who thought that if we didn't have an election, we as aldermen would be holdovers. I said, no, sir, we won't be holdovers. Then he thought, well, maybe we can have a special election. I said, the only time you can have a special election is in the face of a vacancy. There are no vacancies here. There will be a vacancy come June 31st. But on that day, we won't have any powers to call a special election.
Because you will no longer be in office.
You won't be in office. And so this is what happened. What happens in those circumstances, the state has a code known as 2315 271. And what it does is that it when the municipal clerk sends a letter to the state Democratic Party, basically saying, look, we don't have a Democratic Executive Committee, we need help. So under that circumstance, what is evoked is that code 2315-271 that allows Judge Tyree Irving, who's the chairman of the state Democratic Party, to set up what is known as an Integrity Assurance Election Committee.
Wow.
And they're the ones who can form a contract with three different entities. They can form a contract with the Madison Election Commission to run the election, which didn't happen. They could form a contract with the circuit clerk, which didn't happen, or they could form a contract with the municipal clerk. So as I understand it, a contract was, well, there was a contract that was offered to the municipal clerk, but the contract was changed by the city attorney with certain additional elements in it. And to make a long story short, we had a meeting on this. The meeting lasted for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it was just absolutely insane as to how everybody interacted with each other. It certainly wasn't professional, but the fact of the matter is that we have a contract, we have a pathway for having an election. The ballots have been printed. People more likely than not will be able to vote Tuesday. And absentee, of course, you don't have that much time for absentee.
Right.
Absentee ballots should have been ready 45 days before April 6th. But we were.
Yeah.
This is what's important
Okay.
and Judge Tyree Irving talks about this all the time. There's voter suppression all over the nation, and red states, Republican states, enacting rules and regulations that bring about voter suppression. Well, we'll see how that works out in the Supreme Court. But there's another way of voter suppression, and local communities such as Canton have to be real careful. You have to be careful as to who is registering or qualifying to run your elections. No one pays any attention to the Democratic Executive Committee for African Americans because, we run on the Democratic Executive Committee, not the Republican Executive Committee. You have to be very careful as to who is on that Democratic Executive Committee. So some of the big boys in Canton had the bright idea of running Republicans on the Democratic Executive Committee. Everybody was quiet. No one recognized the relevance and the importance of it until 2017, in which those Republicans disqualified a group of folks then. And in 2021, the Republican chairman disqualified folks. And so the question is, I talked to some of the African Americans on that Democratic Executive Committee. They said they didn't have anything to do with it. But the fact of the matter is that we were disqualified. We were in court, and that held up the election as well, and I kept the ballots from being printed. You can't print a ballot if you're in court.
Right.
And so we're out of court now, and the ballots have been printed. But the word of wisdom to these small areas, I know everybody's looking at the mayor, and everybody's looking at the alderman and the dog catcher and the sheriff and the representatives, but there's a small, seemingly unimportant group of folks who run every 4 years called the Democratic Executive Committee, the Republican Executive Committee, who are responsible for the primaries.
All right, let me understand. Teach me a little bit about civics and government.
Yeah.
So there's a state Democratic election committee. Then there are a municipal election committee, and so when the two of those run elections?
There's a state Democratic Party Executive Committee. there's a county Democratic Executive Committee, and then there's a municipal Democratic Executive Committee. And all of them are subunits of the state Democratic Executive Committee. And so the municipal executive committee, those folks actually qualify to run. Like in 27, we're supposed to have 8, because each municipality is supposed to have the number of Democratic Executive Committee folks that matches the number of Board of Aldermen and the mayor. So in the city of Canton, we're supposed to have 8. What happened was we ended up with 5 and not 8. And 3 rolled off that left the Democratic Executive Committee with 3. So the question is, can you really do business with 3? And of course, those 3 were supposed to appoint the other members, including Scanlon, Marion Freeman, and Niwasi Truly. But Scanlon would never invite Niwasi Truly to the meetings, so she never got an opportunity to participate in the Democratic Executive Committee in which he sat. And besides, in court it was revealed that he had folks who sat on the Democratic Executive Committee who were not qualified electors of Canton.
Wow.
And you have to be a qualified elector of Canton. So now you got a problem. So now you got an issue with this guy's Democratic Executive Committee, and supposedly you have an issue with the temporary Democratic Executive Committee, saying that it didn't follow and I believe that they did. And so what happened as a consequence of that? Well, who's the true executive committee? Well, the municipal clerk declared, hopefully on her own, that we don't have a Democratic Executive Committee, shot that letter off to the chairman, and he set up a process under this code, 2315-271, for us to have an election.
Right.
And so seemingly we're going to end up having an election.
Well,
matter of fact,
I'm
glad
Tyree was there.
I'm glad Tyree was there, and Tyree had a lot of folks that voted against him. I don't know what would have happened if Tyree had not been in that seat. I can certainly say that he worked hard to save Canton.
Yeah.
I also want to say, too, that it's critically important to know, and people don't know this, how, of course, the other people who were disqualified was Fred Esco and Rodriguez Brown, and, of course, they had their attorneys, David Humphrey. But people don't, I'm trying to get them to understand the passion that Ed Blackman had in correcting an injustice and in correcting a wrong. And what he did, it seems to me that he did it for William Truly and his wife Niwasi Truly, but he really did it for an entire generation of people. And he really did it for a city that needed a bridge and that needed help. Now, people like Ed never get the recognition that he deserves in his own town. And I said that because, and I have to say this while I'm here, that really teed me off. Senator Barbara Blackman was responsible for the acquisition of $250,000 with the city of Canton through bonds. But the point of the matter is that wasn't just automatic. She served as a bridge to get us before the governor, William Truly and Mayor Vivian Ford of Carthage. Talk to the governor, talk about our needs, talk to the guy who's over budget and funding. And so I presented that to our board, and what really bothered me was the statement that was said, well, we were going to get this anyway. And I said, no, you weren't going to get that anyway. Because there are a lot of senators who got nothing for their communities and nothing for their cities.
Well, I'm glad you have the Blackmans there continuing to fight the good fight and look out for the citizens of Canton, because it seems to me, Mayor, that Canton has been under threat ever since Sidney Ronalds lost.
Since he lost.
When you won the mayor's race, the fight was on. Tell me a little bit about the Utilities Commission and how it functions in Canton.
Well, I will. But I need to mention.
Okay.
And you know more about this than I do because we're talking about money now.
I know how to live without it, but go ahead.
Well, if you look at, and this is critically important, if you look at the city of Canton and you look at our sales taxes for 2020, our sales taxes for 2020 was $221,000. For March, and for 2020, $221,000. To 2021, $264,000. So we had a net gain of $43,000. That's critically important to remember because I'm making a point. The sales taxes for Flora last year was $25,000. This year, $31,000. The sales taxes for Madison in 2020 was $721,000. In 2021, the sales taxes for March was $747,000. For Richland, the sales taxes was $1,031,000. 2021, $1,112,000. The total sales taxes for Madison County in 2020 was $1.9 million. 2021, $2.1 million. That sounds fascinating. But for Rankin County, the total sales taxes in 2020 was $2.7 million, and for 2021, $2.8 million. Well, why is that important? That's important because when you look at the sales taxes for Canton, we have been at the 200,000 mark ad infinitum. The question is, when do we want to move up to 500,000 monthly? How do we do it? How do we surround ourselves with smart people that can get us to that point? I tried to hire a guy named Trey Harrison.
I know Trey well. Butler Snow.
Trey is a genius.
Yes, brilliant.
He's the one who was a part of the economic development in Flowood, and in a lot of other places. And so we had the money to do it, but hiring him was table because, there are some aldermen who had personal problems with me. And I always tell them, forget William Truly.
Right.
I'm not going to enjoy any of this stuff at my stage and age of life. Everything that I do is for those children who are yet unborn.
Exactly.
And for young people.
Exactly.
So don't target me.
Right.
And so what I'm saying is that what we need in Canton, I know you're not going to move back to Canton.
Well, we got to retain our youth. But go ahead.
But what we need is that we need think tankers. We need scholars. We need folks of expertise who are willing to help us move forward through economic development. The only way you can grow your community is through money.
Right.
Either through sales taxes, property taxes, roofs,
right,
bringing in the best school teachers. That's the only way you can do it. And so if we don't do this, then of course our movement forward is going to be quite painful,
quite difficult.
Yeah. Do you not realize that the city of Canton has a population of 14,000 with a median income of 35,000? What happens to the city of Canton when you move 10 miles out? Our population changed from 14,000 to 53,000, and the median income changes from 35,000 to 68,000. What happens when you move 20 miles out? The population goes up to 232,000. Just 20 miles out. And the median income becomes 59,000. So what I'm saying to you is that we're surrounded by wealth.
And talent.
Right. But we have to learn to use all of the growth and development that's like the Amazon, And there are two others that I can't name right now because I signed these things. But at any rate, we need to get prepared, and we have to get prepared for the future. But we cannot be prepared if we are constantly at war.
Right. Well, one of the things, the war is on, and unfortunately, the war is much going on inside our community, inside our own race, as much as it is from fighting a common enemy that's dealing with racist attitudes and technologies.
Correct.
And so we got two wars we fighting. Back when you came along and I came along, we were pretty much united against a common threat.
Common threat.
Now you got to watch both flanks right now with your own people who will target you because of whatever foolish reason.
Yeah.
And then you have the opposition who is trying to take back control. Which brings me back to the threats that Ken has been under. And two things that I really want you to share a little bit is about the utility authority, because it seemed to me that they had a stranglehold on Ken, and that African Americans finally got a chance to govern that agency where most of the tax dollars were being housed. It seems to me the money in Ken was moved away from the mayor's office over into the utility authority for a long time. Did that ever change?
Well, we used to receive $1.8 million annually from a CMU, and of course we don't receive that now as a consequence of the Public Service Commission saying that you can't do that, make that kind of a donation to a municipality. However, you can make donations as it relates to economic development projects. I remember when Maureen Simpson was over.
I want you to say that again, because I never heard that before.
With the city of Canton.
Somebody ruled, the PUC ruled?
The Public Service Commission.
Well, something that has been done that way for...
Yeah, it was done under John Wallace. And as long as John Wallace was there, the Public Service Commission said nothing about this being a violation. And we 2009, when I was the mayor the first time, we would be waiting for that $1.8 million. And
I know you need that.
Yeah, we needed it. Our Nails administration, and then when I became the mayor in 2017, we had to cut our budget by $1.8 million because we depended on the $1.8 million because the Public Service Commission said you can no longer do that.
I mean, this is terrible. I mean, we saw the same thing happen with the nuclear plant down at Port Gibson, you know, that the dollars were taken from the local communities. And now in the utility authority, which has always collected all of the money for utilities and made the contributions to the city under all the white mayors, you become mayor, African Americans become in charge, and the PUC rules that they can no longer do what they've been doing for 100 years.
That's right. You can't do it anymore.
That's terrible.
Yeah, well, that's the reality of
that
it.
is our reality.
Yeah.
And Mayor, I know that Ed has taken that fight and fought against that, as well as the Nissan plant. My understanding was, and you correct me, when Nissan came in, that their taxes to the school district in Ken was excluded in the deal to bring Nissan here from paying taxes.
Well, it was excluded. And matter of fact, initially, what they paid the school was in lieu. They're actually paying them the school taxes now. But the city of Canton does not receive any monies from Nissan as it relates to taxes. And I don't know if people recognize and realize that or not. Nissan says that it's in Canton, but Nissan is in a non-annexation zone that was developed by the Mississippi legislatures, and they did this in the year 2000, if I recall correctly, and I think that before we can annex Nissan, this is 2021, we have about another 10 years.
Wow.
Before they can be annexed.
Wasn't that in Can's Industrial Park down at Gluckstadt?
Yes, it was in Canton Industrial Park, but we were told that as an incentive, where Nissan wouldn't have to pay municipal taxes.
Wow.
And Nissan pays state taxes and county taxes, but it doesn't pay municipal taxes. And that was set up
because the city was little old black Canton.
That's right. That's absolutely.
No, I just believe that, Mayor.
Yeah, sure. And so, we ask through the declaratory judgment under Judge Carlton Reeves if to rule whether or not the city, but whether the city could receive taxes from Nissan, but we lost that. But at least we gave it a try.
Well, Mayor, the alderman controls the folk that are on the board at CMU.
Correct.
And it appears to me that even under the Rudy Warnock deal, that the aldermen were changing the members of the board so that funds could go in that direction.
Well, for a long time, there were several aldermen. Okay, I remember clearly on July 5th, 2017, my first meeting, I was confronted with the Rudy Warnock issue, that we owed Rudy Warnock an X amount of money. And I said, look, I don't even know what in the world is going on. And majority of the aldermen wanted the city to actually pay him simultaneously, eventually.
Why was that, you reckon? Maybe some things we shouldn't discuss tonight.
Well, yeah, but for whatever the reason, there were aldermen who wanted him paid. And,
right.
And look, and I showed one of the aldermen how much money Rudy Warnock had received from 2014, 15, and 16. He had received $1.7 million, and we were not budgeted for those monies. But what's fascinating about this is that Rudy Warnock claimed that CMU owed him $6.2 million, and they had handled that case on and on and on.
Wow.
And so, to make a long story short, the courts ruled, the Southern District as well as the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal ruled that Rudy Warnock was not due one dime. What's contradictory, ironic, and fascinating about that is that there was a movement for this guy to be paid $6.2 million by aldermen.
Black folk.
That's right. So they were willing for him to have a check. They wanted to write him a check
for $6.2
million. And if they could have gotten away with it, they would have. But what's ironic is that the courts rule, look, you guys don't owe this guy any money, and so it's been kicked out of court now, and it's settled. And Ed Blackman handled that case.
Yeah.
And so he's handling another case, MACWA, in which simply speaking, an organization that is essentially trying to take over CMU if you're not careful. And so,
and certainly if African Americans were denied the opportunity to be on the ballot,
yes,
and we lose representation there at the government, all of those things you're talking about, giving control and giving things that would take place, because the little chance that we have lies within our African American elected leadership. Whether they do right or wrong, they're the only chance we got, because we certainly can't go to the Republican Party and ask them to do anything that benefits our community.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And so citizens have to be real careful of what we do is that we elect cousins and relatives and friends instead of electing people that's actually going to protect our interests. We'll spend so much time fighting and being at war, as opposed to trying to develop and grow. It's like Canton is like a hidden treasure. It has a lot of gold, but there are other people who are after the gold and getting the gold while we're fighting.
Right.
And having these tribal wars.
Right.
And hopefully
And we didn't always have tribal wars.
We didn't always have them. There was
That's
a lot of
something
love
that just showed up
and
here in the last
friendship
40 years or so.
camaraderie. And so,
Mayor, we've had our guest to arrive, Bishop Ronnie Crudup. He's my bishop, my friend. And I mentioned to him that I had heard some rumblings about the election commissions and the things that was going on in Canton, and there was even a possibility that there would be no Democratic candidate certified to run in the April 6th election. And his comments to me was, I've never heard of anything like that.
never heard of anything.
Bishop, you wanna chime in on that and let the mayor bring you up to date as to where we are now since you've been able to join us?
Well, it's good to be here, Socrates, with you, and Mayor, certainly good to be with you, and to all of our viewers out there, good evening, and sorry for my tardiness, but sometimes my life is not my own, okay? And there's other things you have to do. I understand that. But Sock, when you told me that, I said, surely that cannot be. I mean, come on, that's just basic building block type things that elections are supposed to be put on. Mm-hmm. People are supposed to be nominated, elected,
right.
and seats are filled. That's democracy,
Right.
At its basics. And I said, not in Canton, Mississippi. Come on.
Yeah. Well, look, the casket was open, and there were at least one leg in the casket and a half of an arm.
Wow.
And so, look, we were close to being lowered into the ground. And fortunately, we were not, but we had created a pathway of having a Republican mayor, because a Republican mayor would have been unopposed if we had followed a pathway
Right.
of not having a system in place that served as a nominating system for the Democratic folks.
But Mayor, that is the very basis, is that the Republican Party did what it was supposed to do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the Democratic Party did not do what it was supposed to do.
We did not, and as I was telling Socrates before you came in, is that you really better be real careful about who are members of your Democratic Executive Committee. In Canton, supposedly there are two, but one of the heads of the Democratic Executive Committee is a Republican.
Well,
Who's John Scanlon. So how does that happen? And previous to that, there were actually three Republicans, John Scanlon and the two white female Republicans, who had actually qualified. All you have to do, in the state of Mississippi, you don't have party loyalty. So a Republican can qualify in a statement of intent. They give their name, their address, and I have not committed perjury or a crime, and they turn their paper in.
In the process, we've got typically you would have election commissioners, at the county level. You would also have, let's just talk about the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
The system is that the Democratic Party is accountable for once again, putting its candidates forth, getting those folks nominated, ensuring that everything is working, whether the election commissioners and all those folks do their work or not. That's supposed to be checks and balances.
But it's not. See, and what happened was everyone paid attention to the mayoral race and the alderman race and the sheriff and the representatives. But the Democratic Executive Committee is really not a grand committee. It doesn't actually register on folks' minds, and no one pays any attention to it. And one of the things that Ellis Turnage said, that we really need to start running Democratic Executive Committee folks from wards right now in our community. They're at large. So no one ever pays attention to those, had not paid any attention but do now, and to those folks who qualified to be members of the Democratic Executive Committee, and that was in 2013. And then, of course, it became a problem in 2017 because it was those same folks who disqualified me in 2017, along with Fred Esco and along with the gentleman named Rodriguez Brown. They came back 4 years later.
So it's not a new deal.
No.
This has been brewing for a while.
They came back 4 years later, and no one was smart enough to pay attention to who these folks are. And so, why are Republicans sitting on a Democratic executive committee? It can't be for any good.
Now, for our viewers, wait a minute. For our viewers, the Republican Party, how does it run its elections there in Canada? How does it run its business?
Now, look, I can go and join the Republican Party and declare that I'm a Republican. I'm quite sure they'll stop me some kind of way. But that would be a whole different story. It's like.
But they're handling that business. I guess what I'm really trying to say is they're handling their business.
Correct.
Bishop,
correctly, so that they get their slate of candidates where they're supposed to be.
Well,
somebody failed to do that on the Democratic side.
Well, what I'm hearing, Bishop,
but that's all over in the small towns in Mississippi and the South. This is not just unique to Canton.
No.
These people are infiltrating Democratic politics.
So that's what I'm hearing, is that not only did the Republicans control their election process, they infiltrated the Democratic Party and served as a election commissioner in the Democratic Party.
And think about this now. If you have Republicans controlling the Democratic Executive Committee, they can decide we're not gonna have a process. They can decide we're not going to have a process. We're not going to have a primary. They can disqualify people. They can decide we're not going to have a primary. Create all kind of.
You know, my grandmother used to say, you can't leave the hen house under the control of the fox.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Or you're going to have a lot of hens missing, okay?
Well, I hope that the state Democratic Party in the whole state of Mississippi utilizes experience in Canton as a lesson learned.
I think the importance of this show tonight is for you to get this message out to our mayors across the state and across the entire country. I mean, again, we're broadcasting live all over the world. And the same issues have to apply in every chocolate city in the world. So it's important that you share, and I'm glad you're doing, what has happened for the last 4 years and what almost happened in Canton, a situation where the Democratic Party and all of the African-American candidates would not have been nominated, and therefore the Republicans win the mayor and the alderman seat by default.
It almost happened.
Almost happened,
which meant that I was actually going to have to get a U-Haul and move somewhere. 'Cause I wouldn't have been able to.
Well, you could have acted like Trump and say you would. You could act like Trump and say you wasn't leaving.
Now look, let me tell you how funny this is. One of the aldermen, I don't know if I talked about this. So one of the aldermen, Reverend, asked the question, well, aren't we holdovers? And I'm saying to him, no, you're not a holdover. There's no statutory code that allows an alderman to be a holdover. Well, can't we call a special election? Well, you're going to be out of office at the end of June 31st. So you can only call a special election if there's a vacancy. And so really, if not for an election, there's no pathway written in Mississippi law as to what happens if these African American aldermen had not had an election. Who appoints the alderman? It certainly wouldn't have been us. And so I've got to find out from people who are brighter than I am, like Ed and Barbara, as to what's the end game. But it would have been a tragedy.
Policy is written thinking about certain possibilities happening, what's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
It is totally unreasonable to think that the democratic framework in Canton, Mississippi would not work so that your Democratic mayor and altar persons would not be in line to be elected. That's not reasonable.
Correct.
It may not be reasonable, but it was almost.
It was almost.
It almost happened.
It almost happened.
Then, and of course, you're here, Mayor, to give the clarion call and to let people know of this awful circumstance that, in some sense, now has been diverted. But somebody has to pay the price.
Yes.
For this.
Well, tell me how the election commissioners are elected. In the very beginning, I mean, what is that process that it allows infiltration, and how do you circumvent that process from happening?
Now, the municipal election commissioners are appointed
By who?
by the Board of Aldermen. Those who run the general election are actually appointed in a code charter government. Now, the Democratic Executive Committee, who runs the Democratic primary, which is a nominating process, those folks are elected every 4 years.
Elected by who?
Elected by the people.
They're on the ballot.
They're on the ballot.
So black folk see who's on the ballot for election commissioner, and if they see a white Republican on that ballot, how in the world would he get elected?
Because names don't register.
You don't have party identity.
Catherine Irvin doesn't register to the voter as a Republican candidate. Nancy Wesley James never registered as that this is a Republican female. John Scanlon never registered because there's no identification, a notification on the ballot that this person on the Democratic race, the Democratic Executive Committee, is running. It's just a name there.
So you're saying and this would be a county issue. So you're saying in Madison County, election commissioners don't run by party affiliation. They run under their name?
In excuse me. In Madison County, well, in any county for that matter, anyone who wants to run to be a member of the Democratic Executive Committee can qualify through a statement of intent. And they don't have to pay a fee of $10. It's just a statement of intent. And so,
but they're running as a Democrat.
They're running as a Democrat, who happens to be Republican.
Okay, so they're running under the label of the Democratic Party.
Right.
They know it's on the Democratic side.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And so these folks who were Republican in terms of their affiliation ran on the Democratic side and got elected.
That's right. That's what happened. That's the lesson learned.
Wow.
For the world, for the nation.
We're gonna tell Cedric, our producer, tonight, and I just want to give a shout out to him here at We Believe Digital. If you're watching us out there tonight on WeBelieveDigital.com or on Facebook, we are continually improving our podcast and our live stream. And Cedric Jenkins is doing an excellent job, but I'm giving him all these compliments to let him know that we're going to run over a little bit in hopes that he will stay in that seat a little bit longer because this is critically important.
It is.
Mayor, it's critically important. Every mayor, every county needs to have some kind of session, some kind of learning session to teach our people the importance and what the damage can be. Because elections are about controlling all of the economy. All of the economy. And that's what it's about. And the economy will always go where it's been going, to white folk and to white vendors and to white lawyers, if we don't be vigilant.
Exactly.
And if we fought too hard just to get, I remember the struggle for Ken to have an African-American city attorney. That was not an easy thing to do. You know, Bob Montgomery and the boys had a stronghold there for 100 years.
100 years.
And so, and John Wallace running CMU, controlling all of the economy and bypassing the African-American community. These elections are tremendously important. And our folk need to know that the little things by not watching who is being elected to the election commission makes a tremendous
Makes a
difference.
tremendous sense. But let me share this with you. In 1997, I was elected alderman at large and ran against now Reverend Sammy Brown. And the term came up for the Blackman Law Firm to be the law firm for the city of Canton. And two of the African American aldermen joined forces with three of the white aldermen, who actually were Republican, but they run as Democrats, that bounced Blackman and Blackman out, and that's how Bob Montgomery's group got in 1997.
Our people out there, black folk, we have got to stick together. We have got to start supporting one another. We have got to cut out all of this foolishness about I don't like this person or that person, and do what's the better good for our communities. Yeah. Bishop, I'm going to turn it over to you for.
Yeah, we do ourselves a disservice when we're not diligent, when we're not watching, when we're not active. I think that there's a lot of folk who are at fault, in this circumstance. And, I brought up this whole word of accountability a little earlier. You've got some elected officials, you talk about those election commissioners who allowed this to be so. And remember that this has never happened. If this had not been circumvented, you would have had something to happen in Canton, Mississippi that has happened nowhere else
in the world.
Well, certainly in the United States, okay? I've been some places in the world you wouldn't be surprised by whatever, okay? But it wouldn't have happened anywhere else in the United States. That says that there's another level of accountability that these people need to be held to, and that may even be recall, okay? Since now you understand who is there and what they were willing to go to, the lengths that they were willing to go to circumvent the process. Because if it had not been caught, and a way found, then the reality is you would have had a Republican mayor, you would have had Republican altar persons in place, and your ability then to be able to deal with that would have been curtailed significantly.
Right.
Okay? Because, you've had a circumstance in Madison County before where you had a candidate that says, I won this election, okay? It was contested, all right? It was even proven legally that the person really did win. The Democratic candidate was not seated.
Right.
Until literally a whole nother election.
We wouldn't be talking about our supervisor.
We're talking about Carl Banks, okay?
Right.
And so we understand a little bit about Madison County politics, all right, in terms of that.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that I think the good citizens of Canton, Mississippi need to rise up in anger over this, and recalling some folks is not out the way now.
And what happened when those shenanigans go on? Mike Espy, the county attorney, was fired.
Absolutely. And
Governor Phil Bryant's daughter
was hired.
Was hired.
Yeah.
People push the economy to their folk every time. And so we just got to be vigilant on that. And Mayor, look, we're going to close out pretty soon, but let me say that I have watched the way that dollars are allocated to the school systems in Madison County. And I still don't understand the formula that allows Madison County, and my daddy went to his grave fighting this fight for Velma Jackson up on the northeast corner of Madison County. They just don't get the dollars in the county, in the black schools up in the northeast county that we see in Madison
Central.
And there's got to be, it can't be a formula that says we're going to allocate dollars out equally or based upon student population. There's something else going on.
Something else. Well, we know what that other factor is. race.
Race.
And it's the same thing if you look at the allocations of Ole Miss and Mississippi State, University of Southern Mississippi as compared to Jackson State and Alcorn.
It's the same.
Valley. It's the same formula.
Same formula.
Yeah. It's nothing.
None for the black sheep who live in the woods. Man, I got a question here. It's a tough question on Facebook that came in and said that citizens want to know the names of the aldermen who was trying to give Rudy that $6.2 million.
Are you serious?
I just read it. I can't.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you much more about it, but that was the question on Facebook. But anyway, we got to stay vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come and share and teach. Your whole process of coming through this struggle was teaching, and now you're at a point in your life where you're saying that everything that you do from this point and from some time before now is about the future generations.
Correct.
And about the children that have got to come after us.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to stay on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because we're losing ground. And so you got to stay on the battlefield. Our children won't have the same quality of life that you and I have enjoyed.
But in response to that, there's always the issue, Reverend, and Socrates, is that soldiers like us, so when does the battle end? It never ends. And it's not going to end. And, at each year passes, I say, okay, I can sit down now. But you can't sit down, and the reason you can't sit down is because there are so few of us who have a cumulative knowledge and experience. Mm-hmm. It's not what we know and what we have been taught. It's not in any books in school, so you can't go to Jackson State and learn it. Ole Miss and learn it. The wealth of knowledge we have, we accumulated over a period of years, and so for us and soldiers like us, we will forever be fighting. Well, why is that? That's because the seeds will never stop being produced. And what do I mean by that? The seeds of bias and bitterness and hatred and you're not a man. The seeds of prejudice. And what happens to our children is that we teach and train our children to love. But there are folks who teach their children to hate. Mm-hmm. That's the problem you have here in America. That I see kids, newborns, and you say, is that newborn going to turn out to be a PhD or a pastor or an architect or an engineer? Is that newborn is going to turn out to be a Klansman? Mm. And so if, let me see, it was 1600, so 400 years later is what, 2000? And so we're now at 2000. And so if we don't start making behavioral changes, and the only behavioral changes that we have made have been legislative changes. What I mean by that, it took laws to change folks' behavior. Mm-hmm. It took a law for us to sit at the hamburger. Nobody, at the hamburger stand, nobody said, okay, well, we're going to let Socrates Garrett sit at the hamburger stand. Go through. It was a law. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? And so...
Power never gives up power.
Power never gives up power. But
power
doesn't have to be the consequence of man's inhumanity to man, of the consequence of injustices and conquest of one man over the other. It doesn't have to be that way. The reality is that it is. And so the next 400 years will put us somewhere, You see what I'm saying? 400 years from today, are we going to be having this conversation? Well, maybe if the seeds are born. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
If the
It's
seeds
very
of the tree-
scary, but
it's scary.
Yeah.
When do the seeds stop being born and stop being fertilized?
Well,
to-
sometimes Doc, Mayor. Sometimes these bad circumstances are a good thing because they put us on proper notice that what we expect, okay, won't happen without some other inspection. You know, those saying that people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And I think that all of the young folk, particularly, let's just, since we're talking Madison County politics, it goes for Jackson too, okay, or anywhere else in the United States, but particularly here in Mississippi, you've been put on notice at this particular point in time that you need to begin to think about rising up yourself
There you
and
go.
be that elected official, okay?
That's right.
That, listen, your circumstance and your life is not going to drastically improve until you and your classmates, your neighbors, your relatives, children that look like you, determine that I'm going to have to be a part of this system. I'm going to have to, be there in these things, so we don't have these kind of things happen. And today for me is a very good example that our folks turn out for national politics. Okay, we'll turn out to elect a president. We'll turn out to elect a couple of senators. In a unique circumstance, right? But we don't turn out for those school boards. We don't turn out for those aldermen. We don't turn out sometimes even for our mayors. We don't turn out for election commissioners. We don't turn out for these things that are tremendously important, because the reality is there's a lot of money spent at the local circumstance, and our politics, as most folks will understand, really
local.
starts local.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's where the millions and the billions of dollars are really moved. Now, in Georgia today, the governor of Georgia, signed a law to turn back the hands of time, to restrict, in light of what happened in Georgia with the presidential election and the senator's election, they once again enacted some laws to say that, they restricted voting, okay?
Wow.
And because they understood we lost because we allowed these things to happen. What does that say? Now, that says that those folks have been very, very diligent about those elections at all of those little small places I'm talking about, from the school board all the way up to the election commissioners and all of these things. Those positions are critical, and if you don't go out there and get involved, you don't go out there and get elected, you get what we're getting today.
Wow. Gentlemen, we're going to have to bring the program to an end. We certainly are going to have to continue this dialogue, and I want to invite you back, and the bishop and I would love to have you here.
Thank you.
And so that we can continue to educate and train and teach and encourage our people. We're going to follow your situation in Canton very closely, and anytime you want to come and go live and get a message out, we'd love for you to use this platform to do it, and you just simply have to give us a call, and we'll make it available to you,
Thank you.
Dr. Truly, at any time.
Thank you.
To Bishop, you any final comments before?
Recall in Canton, Mississippi. Election Commission recall.
To our listening audience out there, we appreciate you joining us live tonight on WeBelieveDigital.com. Share that and share this program as many times as you possibly can. If we don't control our messages, we let someone else tell our story, we are bound to repeat our past. It's critically important for the mayor and folks that are leaders in this community to come and share and give our people hope, and knowledge and empower them in some way. Until next Tuesday or until another special edition, we at WeBelieveDigital.com appreciate your viewership, and good night.